Hello and welcome Disney Infiniteers. This is James from iHeartInfinity.com, and today we'll be taking a look at the brand new Force Awakens figure for Poe Dameron. Poe was released on December 18th, the same day as the movie, alongside Finn, Rey, and Kylo Ren for Disney Infinity 3.0. And for any fans who have not yet seen The Force Awakens, there are no spoilers in this video, keeping in mind that I consider anything that was in the trailers to be fair game. And so let's go ahead and take a quick look at his background. Poe Dameron was introduced in the 7th Star Wars movie, The Force Awakens. And since the movie was made with such a heavy veil of secrecy, there has been very little information that has come out about the character, but what we do know is that he is a pilot for the Resistance, which is the spiritual successor to the Rebellion. So let's go ahead and talk about his figure compatibility. Now, like the other Force Awakens characters, Poe is a Disney Infinity 3.0 character. That means he only works in Disney Infinity 3.0. You cannot use him with 1.0 or 2.0, but he should be usable in 4.0 and beyond. In terms of playsets, he's usable in all three of the Star Wars playsets. That's Twilight of the Republic, Rise Against the Empire, and The Force Awakens. In The Force Awakens, he's usable right from the beginning, so you can just pop him on the portal and he's ready to go. However, in Rise Against the Empire and Twilight of the Republic, you need to find his crossover coin first, and we've got some videos up if you need help with that. In addition to the playsets, he is also usable in any toy box mode, which includes Speedway or Takeover. And now we'll talk about gameplay for a bit, but first I'm actually going to take a little bit of a segue here. Back when Disney Infinity 3.0 first launched, 4 of the characters were from the Star Wars Rebels TV show, which left everyone wondering where the 5th character, Hera Syndulla, was. If you haven't seen the show, Hera is basically the team leader and pilot for our protagonists. So she very rarely has a combat role in the show. Nevertheless, she is a very important character and has a lot of fans, myself included. Which is why it felt odd for her to be absent from the Infinity roster. And in many ways, I think Poe Dameron is actually kind of our answer to that question, since he is in many ways a very similar character to Hera. They're both pilots, and they're both leaders. Poe's not necessarily a leader in the movie, but he is the leader of a squadron of X-Wings. And the problem within Disney Infinity becomes apparent when you start playing with Poe. There's really nothing here to distinguish him as a character from any other character in the game. Not just the Star Wars characters, all of them. Poe is about as generic a character as you can get. His basic attack is a punch, his secondary attack is a ranged pistol attack, and his special attack is to summon BB-8, which is pretty cool admittedly, but actually not that effective, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But you don't have to think really hard about this to figure out where the main problem is, and that is simply that Poe's primary characteristic within the movie is that he is a pilot, a very good pilot, but in Disney Infinity that doesn't count for anything. All pilots in the game are equal. It doesn't matter if the pilot in the X-Wing is Poe, or Mulan, or Anna from Frozen. The X-Wing is going to handle exactly the same regardless, and this is also true of the cars. So when you take away the piloting aspect, what are you left with Poe, and also Hera for that matter? Basically nothing. And it pains me to say that because I love both of those characters. But just because Hera is awesome in Rebels, especially in Season 2, she's fantastic in Season 2, and Poe is awesome in The Force Awakens, especially the second half, doesn't mean that they're perfect fits for Disney Infinity 3.0. This is also, I imagine, why we don't have figures for the droids like BB-8 and R2-D2. While there is a demand for them as figures, what would they do in the game? It's not an easy question to answer, and you can definitely tell that the Disney Infinity team struggled with trying to get Poe stuff that he could do. Now that said, what he is perfectly fine. He's just generic. He's not a bad character. He's just one that you're going to pick up based on whether or not you like the character rather than his abilities or his strengths. You could also say the same about Han Solo. In terms of powers, these two characters are actually extremely similar, discarding the special move. But Han Solo has several decades worth of fan following behind him, whereas Poe Dameron is the new kid on the block. And the one thing that Poe does have going for him is that he can summon BB-8. You can see him running around right now. The problem is BB-8 doesn't do anything. In theory, what he's supposed to do is distract the enemies and they target him instead of Poe. But the problem is once Poe hits them even once, they turn their attention back to him. So he's completely useless against bosses, but he will get you out of a group situation if you're surrounded. But, on the other hand, he is completely adorable, and it's fun to see him running around the field even if he's not doing anything. So I guess what the bottom line here is that Poe Dameron is going to be a figure for completionists, either of the entirety of Disney Infinity 3.0 or just the Star Wars characters, or for people who are just really big fans of the character. If you're the kind of player who only wants to use figures that have something distinct or interesting in their gameplay, you're probably going to want to give him a pass, especially if you already own Han Solo, because they are, for all intents and purposes, the same character. And it really does pain me to say that, because I do like the character and I really want him to be really good, especially since he's the X-Wing pilot. I have loved X-Wings and TIE Fighters since those old video games came out in the 90s. And in many ways, Poe is kind of the representation of those games in a distilled form, taking over for Wedge Antilles from the original series. But the simple reality is, as I've said, this is not the type of game where that really plays into things. It's not an advantage for him to be a pilot, which is unfortunate, but also understandable, because Disney doesn't want you to pick your pilots based on skills. They want you to pilot or drive your vehicles with your favorite character, so everybody's equal. But I do wish that they had found some way to make Poe a bit more distinctive, and then it would be much easier to recommend picking him up. But I'm honestly having a hard time myself coming up with alternatives for Poe that could have made him a very interesting Disney Infinity 3.0 character, so it's very hard to hold that against the Disney Infinity team. Still, I'm holding out hope that they have something in mind, and that's what Hera is going to be if they ever get around to making her. And that's pretty much going to wrap things up here. If you guys have any thoughts about how Disney Infinity could have handled Poe differently, maybe with a more interesting twist, leave those thoughts in the comments and maybe we can get a discussion going about this. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, may the Force be with you.